Hey everybody, it's a little bit after 1, so I'll go ahead and get started. And looking at the chat room, I'll start with the item that's not part of our regular tour, which is Allie's question about cybersecurity and the steps that we take to protect your data. First of all, we're hosted with Amazon Cloud, and they have a variety of things in place. We also have there's various programming techniques. There's cross-site request forgeries. There's SQL injection attacks. So you asked me to put it in simple terms. So it's hard to be very thorough while keeping it simple. But there's a combination of the programming techniques and also backups. So we have daily backups of your databases. Each SMMware site has its own completely separate database. Your data is not really mixed in with each other's data. It's kept very separate. That and the programming techniques. There's SSL, which is the encryption that happens along as the messages are communicated across the internet. They're encrypted using SSL. When we integrate with other programs, we use a protocol called OAuth version 2, which is a way of making sure that you are who you are and reassuring. So when we connect to QuickBooks, that is done using this OAuth 2 protocol. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can, but I guess I would sum it up to say there's a variety. It's very much on our minds, and there's a variety of steps that we take to keep your data safe. So Allie, I hope that answers your question, and I'd be happy to get into more detail if you wanted. Maybe that would be more or less a separate conversation. But there's certainly plenty more to say if we wanted to about that topic. Okay, so today is going to be a general tour of SMMware, and we divide that into 4 basic tracks. We're going to start with this blue track, talking about clients and sales leads and jobs and invoices and such. And then we have a few other tracks that we'll get into along the way. As we are going through this, if people have questions, feel free to interrupt. I'm here to answer your questions, not just to give a canned speech. So I would very much love to hear your questions as they come up. And we have a download. It is a software selection worksheet that helps you to understand what kind of questions you might want to be asking, and offers some information about how SMMware can fulfill those various categories. Okay, so we're going to dive in, starting talking about sales. And then there's been a few other questions that we'll talk about as we go. And I'm assuming that you're getting a phone call coming in, and it is the first time you're ever speaking to this person. So I'm starting a new sales lead. I think it's worth pointing out that there are 3 essential records in SMMware. We've got a client record, which holds information about them as a person, things that don't change when they move from place to place. Their name, of course, their phone number, and their email address, things like that. And then we have, each time there's an opportunity, we have a sales lead record, which is what we're starting right here. So when we go to start a new sales lead record, if it is for an existing client, they would be in this list. But I'm saying that this is not an existing client, so I'm going to go here. And we're going to put in an email address. Going down this page, there's a few things I'd like to point out. This is where we collect information on who sends this business your way. And we have 3 fields. A lot of programs would maybe just have 1 field where you put in the name of the person, but that doesn't let you answer a lot of questions. So we start off with a category, which could be something like realtor. And then we go down to the company and the person. And that information allows us to run a report that lets you answer questions like, okay, from the first quarter of the year, where did our business come from? Maybe this much from real estate, this much from senior living centers, this much from lawyers, and so on. We also have the ability to add a client representative to the profile for this client. It could be the adult child, or maybe an estate situation, it could be an attorney. So you can indicate that there. We also have some custom fields where you can record information. This is, again, information about them as a person that doesn't change when they move from place to place. It could be mobility issues, if they have memory issues. Sometimes you have an employee who's allergic to cats, so you want to know who has a cat. Or if they have a mean dog, maybe you want to know that they have a friendly dog too. Then we have this field, call after this time or call before that time. These are fields where you can assign whatever label you want to. The labels that we're looking at here are strictly what I happen to have chosen as demonstration purposes. You don't have to use the same ones. Favorite ice cream, I love ice cream, so had to have that in there. Moving down the page, this is where you can record an address. If they are moving out of a single family home, you can just start typing in the address here. If they're coming from a common address, someplace you deal with on a regular basis, you can start typing in their name. This is probably a senior living center. You pick it from the list, and SMMware will fill out the form for you, all the address, the city, and the state, and so on. And that means you don't have to cut and paste it. You don't have to memorize it. SMMware's got your back. All right, so we're coming back to the sales lead record we had started before. We had started the sales lead record. We took a little detour to enter some client information. And now we're back at this brand new sales lead. And the third kind of record that I talked about, having 3 records, the other one is a job. So when you win the work, then you create a job from that. For Lucy, you have 12 fields in the system, and you can put whatever label you want on them. Yeah, you're not committed to the 12 that I was showing as part of this demonstration. So we're back here on the sales lead. We have sales lead status levels. These are something that you can customize. The same is true for the job types. You can customize this list to be whatever you want. And you can put in the lead salesperson. If you're not going to use our quoting system, you can directly enter the amount and the hours. We'll come back to that in a little bit. And we have some more custom fields. Here we have up to 28 custom fields. Once again, you can put whatever label you want on them. But in this case, these are things that change when they move from place to place. So for instance, the elevator code is not likely to be the same from one building to the next. Garbage day, also not very likely. Or gate code, things like that. And here's where we can record information about where they're moving to. Once again, you can start putting in a title, and it will have fill out the rest of it for you. This is the status board. We're going to see that more on the home page. And these tags are also something you can customize. You can have more tags, different labels, different colors, whatever you want there. I would also point out another common theme in SMMware is we've got this text field, and we are pre-filling it with some text that came from our settings, and you can customize this. The intention here is you're telling the user, this is the kind of information I want you to collect at this stage of the game. However, again, with our common theme, we're trying to not lock you in to certain things. So it's not a series of drop downs. It's a wide open field, but with hints about what we want to collect. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And we're going to go ahead and start looking at what it's like to create a quote. This is a blank quote. Working with quotes in SMMware is a question of mixing and matching all the different blocks that we provide you with. These are building blocks. And it could be the client block has information about them, their name, their phone, and address, and so on. A labor block where you can put in your line items and so on. And once you've worked with the system for a little while, you're going to create some templates. And you will typically start a quote by loading up a template. So here's one template that I loaded up, and you can see this is a header block. It's got larger, bold text. It's a way of visually dividing up the quote. We've got some line items. The areas in gray are either being pulled, that information is either being pulled from somewhere else or it's being calculated. So for instance, the subtotal for the line item is being calculated for you. You're not going to have to hand enter that. But all these other fields, you can go around and start customizing them. Moving down the page, we've got just a big text field. We've got a summary field. So it takes all the different categories of fees and adds them up for you. We have a legal block, and this is where we deal with e-signing as well. SMMware partners with a company called SignNow, which is very much a competitor to DocuSign. and they handle making sure that these signatures are legally enforceable. When people are signing through this system, they leave a digital trail. They can't really say that they never signed it. If you just hold up an iPad to somebody and they put a squiggle on it, that is not going to be as legally enforceable, because they can say that if somebody else is doing the squiggling. When we want to do an e-signature, we need to have two things. We want the name of the person that we're having sign it, and we want some sort of contact information, an email address or a phone number. SMMware also offers some shortcuts so that you can put in client and email, and that way you put that into your template, and when you go to create one, SMMware will swap that information out for you, so you don't have to worry about constantly exchanging that information yourself. Other shortcuts are the spouse, the salesperson. So we got email and we've got phone. So these signatures can be solicited via email and text message. SMMware has two different basic approaches for how you charge your client. Our simplest approach is where you assume that literally every hour in this job is going to be charged at the same rate. And that way it doesn't require any setup. So it's very simple. If you have more sophisticated approaches that you want to employ, then we offer something called a job code, where you will simply a list of the kind of work being done and the price you want to charge for it. And so it could be packing and unpacking. And some of the reasons why you would want to charge different rates. You might have somebody who just started with the company a week ago and they are like a junior level packer. You might have somebody who's been with you for years, they're a senior level packer, and you charge accordingly. Or you might have maybe you charge a different rate for when you're traveling. So you charge the client for when you're in the car, but since you're just sitting in a car, you don't charge as much as you do when you're on site and actually doing the work. Another reason to do is the owner, or it might be for when you're having a vehicle involved, for the use of the vehicle, like a van, moving van. So those are the two approaches, the single rate for the entire job versus the job codes. And so we've started this quote. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Let's take a look at the PDF that it can generate. You would, of course, have your own custom header. You're not going to have this generic SMMware one, but this does let you see what your clients will be looking at when you send them a quote. Next, we often see where you give the client a quote and they say, hey, this is great, but now they want some changes. So I'm creating a new quote. I'm going to hit save. So now we're looking at quote version number 2. Another thing about SMMware is that some systems have all of your quotes mixed in together so that this quote is for this client, then there's another quote for a different client. They're all just jumbled together. SMMware, when we go back to the main sales lead, we'll see that those quotes are gathered in one spot to make it clear that they're all for this one particular opportunity. The next thing is we've got this field. It's marked as being private. And this information is not going to appear on the PDF. You can write whatever you want here. So that way, 6 months down the line, you're looking back and you see that there's 3 or 4 different versions of the quotes, and you can look at these notes to understand why they wound up being created. And we can also typically email the clients the PDF as an attachment. And so we'll go back to, this is where you initiate the e-signing with this button right here. And we'll go back to the main sales lead. I wanted to point out that when we use these job codes, you can, there's default rates in the settings editor, and then each time you create a sales lead or a job, it will take a copy of those, and you can set them, you can customize them for each sales lead or job. So if you feel like this is going to be a particularly difficult job, maybe you would want to increase the rates, or if you feel like it's a very competitive situation and you need to lower the rates to win the work, you can do that as well. So that is very flexible in terms of how you charge your clients. I'm going to go ahead back to the listing for sales leads. At the top of the page, we've got this gray bar, which is a filter, and you'll see them throughout many screens in SMMware. Typically, you'll see a date range, and whatever settings we have here, we can see reflected down in the listing below. So this is a listing of their ongoing sales leads. And in many of these filters, you can see an export button, which will generate a CSV file. So that's comma separated variables, which basically means an Excel file. And whatever filter settings we have up here will be reflected in that export as well. So I'm going to move along now. I'm going to look at a job. So list of ongoing jobs. And here it's very similar to the sales lead, which makes sense because they are kind of two sides of the same coin. And they do have some minor differences. Instead of a job, or instead of a sales lead status, we now have a job status. Instead of the lead salesperson, now we're looking at the team lead who's going to run this particular project for you. I'd also like to point out some shortcuts in SMMware before we continue. I'm clicked on the name of the client. It took us to our client profile. This is kind of the hub of the wheel where you can see how you've been doing with this particular client in the past. So this is a list of jobs that you've done for them. This is a list of sales leads that you've had for them. And then you can just jump between them as you like. Since we're back here on the sales lead, I wanted to point out another couple of things. We have a couple of automations that are worth mentioning. When you put in a customer decision date, SMMware will create a task. It'll assign it to the lead salesperson, and it will give it a due date that matches the customer decision date. So that way, SMMware is basically going to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, it's time to talk to this person because this is right around when they said they're going to make a decision. Another automation we have is when you submit a quote to them, then it wouldn't make sense to have this date be the due date for the task because that's today. So in the settings, you say that when this happens, you're going to set a due date that's 1 week out or 2 weeks out, whatever suits you. And that way, SMMware once again is going to be tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, you gave them a quote. And if you haven't heard from them by now, then you want to talk to them. If I created a job from this particular sales lead, it's going to be here where I can click on it and jump over to the job profile. So we're looking at the job profile again, just as I mentioned before. These job custom fields are the same as your sales lead custom fields, and the information that you entered into the sales lead gets copied over here as does various other information like the job type. And now's a good time to talk about the file manager. And we can upload PDFs, Excel files, photos, and so on. And here we'll point out the long cryptic file names that our phones like to assign, but which humans, of course, don't really know what to do with. We have an auto rename function, and I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to put a tag on it. The thinking here is that you walk into a room, like a bedroom, you take some photos, you upload them, and then you tag them with the appropriate labels. So the names of the files are going to come out, in this case, bedroom 1, 001, bedroom 1, 002, and so on and so forth. And I can go ahead and upload those. Once we have files uploaded, we can click through them in the gallery here. We can enter notes. Typically, there'll be furniture in the room. You might have something to say like this is being donated or this is going to the new place, something like that. We can see who uploaded the photo and when. We can download it again. We can share it. We can rotate it, rename it, retag it, and basically work with it as we need to. SMMware has 2 different file managers. Rather than have a single file manager and then you go through the list of photos and say this one is more private and restricted access, this one is more general access, we have 2 different buckets, and all your restricted documents, like say if you choose to have somebody sign a quote and then you scan it to a PDF, and you don't want everybody in the whole company to see it, you can put it here in the restricted file manager. But if it's just photos of the home, then maybe it goes here under the regular file manager. So I'm just going to take a look at what Allie's question is. So for Allie, regarding mobile devices and minimum specs, there's really nothing on the market that would not work with SMMware. I should explain that on a mobile device, SMMware is still a website as opposed to a so-called native app that you download from the App Store. And you can create a shortcut on the desktop of your mobile device. So you tap on it, and it opens the browser, takes you to SMMware, and then you can tell the browser to memorize your login information. So it feels very much like you're working with a so-called native app, but you don't have to worry about downloads and updates. So the fact that it's browser-based means that there's really not much in the way of minimum requirements. For Clarice, in terms of getting data into SMMware, you're talking about from Company Cam. I mean, not directly. You can, if you have photos. Let's see, just looking at Clarice's question. If the photos are on your desktop, then you would be able to upload them to SMMware. But in terms of directly moving them from Company Cam into SMMware, there's not currently an integration between them. So hopefully that answers your question, and I will go ahead and move along. So that is our file manager. From here, I'd like to talk about your associates and about their profiles, entering hours, entering expenses. So here we are looking at an associate profile, and I'll point out that you can put up a portrait, and later on when we look at the calendar, we'll see that the client's going to get an email, and the portrait's going to be in there for the event lead, which makes them more comfortable with opening the door to let your team in. Also, I'd like to point out our approach to payroll. We have, again, two approaches: a simple approach, which is able to distinguish between 4 different things, which is somebody acting as a team member or a team lead, and whether they're working on the weekend or the weekdays. And that's the simple approach. For the fancier approach, you can tie these pay levels to the job codes, and you can create your own pay levels. A pay level is really just a label. And so you go from a job code, and it's tied to a pay level. And then for a given associate, that pay level can be tied to the actual rate they get. So it's a very powerful and flexible system for how you can pay your employees. Next, we have permissions, and you have everything from normal user, team lead, admin, senior admin to company owner. So that is a kind of a generic catch-all permission that applies whenever one of these more granular permissions is not in effect. So we have a sales role privilege that determines whether somebody can see the sales leads, and so on and so forth. And when you are trying to see a sales lead, this is the permission that would apply. And the main takeaway from this is the number of permissions that we have that allow you to really fine-tune what people can do within your SMMware. We have companies that like to let their employees see a lot of stuff. They feel that everybody's going to work together better the more they see. And then we have other companies where maybe there's a greater tendencies towards squabbling, and so then they take an approach where people can basically see what's in front of them instead of seeing everything company-wide in terms of what jobs are going on and what events and so on. We also have some HR functionality where you can upload files that are HR related, like say you take notes and then you upload them, or you scan them to a PDF and then upload them to SMMware. And you can create tasks, write notes, and you can see the events and the history of hourly rates that you've paid somebody. And then from here, I'm going to move on and look at the entry of hours and mileage. So on this screen, we can put in the date that the work was done, which job it was for. Here under the time, we can go ahead and type in a hint. So this is useful when you're on your phone, so you don't have to type the whole thing out or do a lot of scrolling. You can just type in a few digits, and SMMware will guess that 4:15 means 4:15 p.m. You can mark whether this was billable or not. We'll put in some sort of description. We have a list of predefined terms, which you can, of course, customize. And we also have a formula for travel based on distance as opposed to charging for time. The formula that we support is the idea of putting in the total mileage that you've traveled, and SMMware will have a setting for how many miles are free and then how much to charge for each mile after that. So if I went 100 miles grand total round trip, I would just put in that figure right here, and then SMMware would do the math. If you worked in one place in the morning and another place in the afternoon, you can take care of both entries at once. You don't have to rinse and repeat, one entry at a time. Excuse me a second, I'm going to close the blinds. The sun actually came out here. Which hasn't been the case for a few days. Up above is where you make your new entries, and down below is where you can see the existing entries to edit and delete them, at least until they are part of an invoice. So this is an approach where at the end of the day, you can say, all right, I started this job and I was there at 9 a.m. and I ended it at 3 p.m. So you make the entry after the work is done. SMMware does also support a punch clock. So that you can do this at the start of the day. You can come in here and indicate which job it's for. You maybe can start some notes, click on the big old start button. And then when you're at the end of the day, when you're leaving, you open that screen again and stop the clock. And SMMware also takes care of some rounding for you. So nobody wants to charge their clients by the second, or at least clients don't want to see that. SMMware can round your time up to the 15-minute mark or the 3-minute mark. And the reason for the 3-minute choice is because it rounds nicely within the 60-minute hour. So it's a nice even number. Because clients don't like to see 0.1333335 hours or anything like that. All right, we're going to move along and talk about entering your expenses. This is a very similar approach. We're going to put in the date, pick a job. This time we're going to put in an amount of money and a vendor. And for the description, we can once again use a predefined list, or we can just start typing. And we also can mark it as billable or not. These radio buttons refer not to whether the client is going to pay you back. This refers to whether your employee paid out of pocket, and then you need to reimburse the employee. We also have the opportunity to, if you take a photograph of the receipt, you can upload that when you're entering the expense, and they are grouped together formally. They're not a separate just list of photos where you have to pick out which ones are receipts. And when we go to look at invoices, we'll see that the receipts can be appended to the invoice if you want. That's a system setting. And we're actually going to head over to invoices now. Right now we're looking at a listing of invoices. I'm going to go ahead and edit one of these. So SMMware has different status levels for the invoices, starting with preliminary, which is a way of telling people that you don't want this sent to the client because it's not done. We also have the idea that this is optional. The team leads were on site and they know what work was done and who did it. So maybe you want them to have a look at the invoice and make sure it's all good. And so you can mark it, the office manager can mark it as finalized, and then the team lead would see that they need to approve it. And after they do, it becomes marked as TL approved, which just means team lead approved. This is what you see as a web view of the invoice. And we also have a field where you can write a note to the client. There's also a private note. This is where you write something that won't appear in the PDF. SMMware offers 3 different formats for our PDFs, and you can choose whichever format you want at any time. There are some clients where the more detail they see, the longer the conversation is going to be before they sign off and say, okay. And for them, you might want to present the summary, which is simply a single line item for the grand total fees, grand total labor, expenses, and so on. There are other people where the more detail you show them, they can see how much work was done, and they say, all right, your fees are fully justified, so they'll sign off more quickly. So that's a PDF you might want to give in that case. For a really long job, you might have an invoice that gets very long, and at that point in time, you can use the roll-up format. So instead of having 5 employee line items for a given day, it will roll up that to a single line item. This little icon here is QB in a round circle, and we'll talk a little bit more about our QuickBooks integration later. We also have a few fine points. Sometimes you're working with a senior living center and they're going to pay for part of the work, and they want an invoice. They want to be shown as the payee on the invoice. And so you can override who the payer is here. And so normally we'd go to show the client as the payer, but you can override that to show somebody else. So these are the kind of fine points that have come up over time. SMMware has been around long enough to gotten a lot of feedback from all of you. And so we have made these kind of additions so that SMMware serves you better. All right, so that was invoicing. And this brings us to the end of our first track, where we talked about clients and sales leads, creating jobs, entering hours and expenses. We've talked about invoices. We also talked about files, file management. And next, we're going to talk about what we call organizations and contacts. For Marcus, oh, thank you very much. I appreciate your kind comments. And we do try to be very responsive to both customer questions and these kind of minor modifications to make SMMware work better for you. All right, so we're going to talk about the resources section, and you can think of it as a vendor section, but it's a little bit more nuanced than that. We have here the organization manager, which is a list of companies, and contacts, which are the people who work at those companies. And the reason we don't call it a vendor section is because there are other kinds of records that you will store here. Under home improvement, for instance, if a client asks you, hey, who's a good plumber? Maybe you never spent $1 with Carlton Plumbing, but you have them here. And when the client asks who's a good plumber, you can come here, look up the information, pass along email and phone to the client. So we do have our traditional vendors here as well. So that's the first kind of record. The people that you can refer, that's the second kind of record. And then the people that refer business to you, they are a third kind of record. So maybe lawyers, might be senior living centers. So these are the people who might be sending business your way. I've popped open an organization profile. And what I'd like to point out here is that we also have a file manager and a task manager. We can write notes. We can log that a call came in. This is something as well, the assigned jobs. When we're looking at the job profile, I skipped over it at the time, but you can assign different organizations to that job. And it could be a moving company, it could be a realtor, and so on, a lawyer. And then that allows you to formally know that, okay, these are the people that we're working with for this job. And then you can also, on the flip side of that, you can go to look at that organization profile, and you can see how many jobs that you have sent to that particular organization. So if you're trying to ask them for a favor about changing a schedule or something like that, you might come here and say, look, we've sent you 20 or 30 jobs. Maybe you can help us out by swapping around this date or something. And so under the file manager, a common example is you're working with a moving company. They have a certificate of insurance. You can store that here under the file manager. And then you can also have a task that comes due when that certificate expires. So that way it helps you to get the latest version of that. You're never caught without one. So here's the contact that is associated with this organization. You can have, of course, as many as you like. And when we're looking at a contact, I would like to point out that you can mark them as somebody who sends business to you. There's also a field for the date of last contact. And we can also upload files, create tasks, and write notes and calls for the contact as well. But the information that they send you business and the last time you spoke to them, that's going to be important for some functionality that we'll see on the home page. And that is our section, resources, organizations, and contacts. That's one of our shorter sections in the tour. So now we're going to talk about tasks and notes and calls on the calendar. I'm going to go back to a job. And here I'll point out, since I'm back on a job profile, this is where you can mark various organizations as being involved in this job. You just click on the plus button, you start typing out their name, you pick them from the list, and they'll be added on here. We also have the ability to create a team of associates for this job, which affects mainly the communications. Being on this team or not being on this team is not related to whether you can assign them to an event on the calendar. This is about communications. Going down the page, I'll point out that there's a status board that's going to be, we're going to take a closer look at that on the home page. But right now we're going to be looking at tasks. Go ahead and create a new one. So I can set a due date, some reminder dates, a priority, and then later on we'll mark it with a date completed. This is where I can put in some sort of short summary. And then optionally, I can put a longer description down below. Here is the person that it's assigned to. Our approach to assignments is that if you have everybody just simply assigned at the same level to a task, it's kind of like everybody's in charge, so nobody's in charge. So the way that we handle that is we have a single person who is the primary assignee, and then we have secondary assignees. And that way it is clear that Janet is in charge of this task, but it's also possible that if she's out sick or something like that, that other people can take over and take care of things for that task. And you can modify the tasks from this listing. You can change priority, who it's assigned to. There are emails that go out when a task is assigned to you. You'll get an email. If you're the person who created the task and you assign it to somebody else and they finish the task, you get an email. So there's a lot of communications that go out when it comes to tasks to keep you informed. You can also modify other fields here as well. If this was, let's see, this was, I forgot what I was trying to say. If this is a situation where you have been working with SMMware for a while and you realize that you're creating the same kind of tasks over and over again at the same stage of a project, we offer something called a task group. And in this case, this is 1, 2, 3 tasks. You define these tasks in our settings editor, and you can put in some predefined text. You can say that the due date is going to be a certain period out, and then reminder emails. You can preset the summary and the main body, who it's assigned to. When I look down this list and it's got the 3 tasks, maybe one of them doesn't apply this time around, so I click on the X to get rid of it. And then that way, this is going to help you with consistency, because instead of you having to remember, oh, these are the 5 tasks that I do at this stage of the game, and maybe you forget one of them, SMMware is going to present you with all 5 of those tasks, and you can get rid of the ones that you don't need. For Tia, yes, you can shut off some of these functionalities so that you do not have to get multiple notifications. So yeah, there is options for that for Tia. And let's see, we're looking at our predefined groups, our task groups, and that was looking at tasks. So now we're going to look at notes. Once again, you can make changes from here. You can edit the note more fully. So here, this is where you can edit the summary, but if I want to edit the body of the note, then I'll open it up here. You can see who created the note and when, and the people are not able to edit each other's notes, so you can be confident that the person who wrote it here and on this date, that's what they really said. It wasn't somebody else who jumped in and maybe entered something that turned out to be a mistake. Moving down, we've got the calls. So the idea here is that somebody, maybe they just called you now and you want to record that and put it into the system, so you create a call log. This is a little bit more like a task. A note is very simple. It just has the summary and the body field. But once again, with a call logging, we have a date for the call. We put in a summary. You can use this to record a call that came in. You can also use it to plan for a call in the future. For the future calls, you're going to want to know if it's inbound or outbound. You're going to call them or they're going to call you. You're going to assign it. You can have some secondary assignees, and you can have some text down below to just explain the whole thing. So those are the calls. From here, I'm going to jump to the home page. I mentioned before the idea of a status board. Now here we are on the home page, and we're going to make use of that. The status board for jobs. This is your 30,000 foot view of how things are going across your ongoing actual projects. And these flags, you can modify them from here. You can update the note. And the idea is that you'll go through this list, and hopefully they would all be green. But if they're yellow, then maybe you have to take care of them soon. If they are red, perhaps they have to be addressed before you go home for the day. And again, you can modify this list of tags. You're not going to be forced to use exactly what we provide for you by default. But if this was marked as an alert and I wanted to take care of it, I would go ahead and I can edit the job and get more information about the job as a whole. And I can make my changes here. The thinking is that you'll go through the list and it's not going to reflow the list until you're done. And then you click on this little refresh button and then it updates it to show all of your changes. We have a similar status board for sales. And once again, you can modify these tags. And once again, you can click you can modify the note as well as the tag. From here, we'll talk about the task center. By default, it's showing you my tasks. These are the ones that are assigned to me. Whether I'm the one who created the task or maybe someone else created it and assigned it to me, it is nevertheless my task, so it appears here. And I can make my changes. I can edit the full body of the task, or I can just work with some of the fields here. There's also a view for the secondary tasks. We divide them out because when you are a secondary on a task, you don't have the same level of responsibility. We have a call center. Oh, going back here, there's a few more to talk about. If I create a task and delegate it to somebody else, I can keep track of how that's going by looking at the My Delegated Tasks view. And if I'm a higher level user like an admin or company owner, I can see the All Unfinished Tasks view and the Recently Finished Tasks view. There's a similar functionality for the calls. There is an optional feature that applies to hours and expenses so that they have to be approved before they can appear on an invoice. And so if you're the team lead for that job, you'd come here and see, oh, these are the ones that need approval. If I am the employee whose hours were rejected, then I would see them here and I would go to edit them and I could see the reason why, and I could modify it and resubmit it to the system. From there, we've got a couple of sections to show these are the teams where I'm the team lead, and these are the teams where I'm a team member. And again, we're separating them out because if you're the team lead, you have more responsibility than if you're the team member or one of the team members. So next, when we're looking at contacts, we talked about marking them as sending you business and the date of last contact. So in this section, the system is going through all of your contacts. It finds the ones that send you business, and it orders them to show you the 10 where it's been the longest since you've spoken to them. The thinking here is that in your ideal world, this list would all have recent dates. And if it's been this long, then you definitely want to get in touch with them. And then you can call them or email them, and then you can go ahead and update the date of last contact. And once again, you go through the entire list and you can hit refresh to make sure that your changes are finished. And if those dates are all recent, then you are good to go. If there are still some others where it's been a long time, then you need to work through that list. So now we're going to talk about scheduling, and there's a section here called My Invites. And if I had any open invites, I could respond to them directly here and say that, yes, I'm interested, or no, I'm not. At the bottom, we have a section called My Schedule. And this will only show me events that I am a part of, which is to say I'm an attendee or maybe I'm the main contact. This is not company-wide. So going back to our permissions, if I have access to the company calendar, then I'll have this link. I can follow that. And now I'm looking at all the events that are across the entire company. Moving down at the bottom of the page, what we believe in is having these tags and the idea that you can look at an event and use the color to know something about that event. And you can define your own tags. There's actually 28 of them, and different labels, different colors, and so on. And we've seen 3 different ways that people tend to use these tags. We can distinguish between a job event and a sales event as the simplest approach. And we can also maybe talk about the kind of work being done, packing and unpacking. or who's in charge for that event, Judy, Carmen, or Margot, looking up there. And when we look at the events in the calendar, I can see the name of the client and the time range. Where it says who, those are the initials of the attendees. And I click on it to get more detail. And I might have a link here to the address. This is going to hand you off to your phone's mapping function. It could be Google Maps or Apple Maps, and it will give you the turn-by-turn directions to your destination. Coming back here, we see the more detail. If the client has confirmed the event, then those confirmations will appear here, and it will say on this date, this person confirmed via email, or this person confirmed via phone. So it really helps you in terms of a client. You show up at their door and they say, well, I didn't know you're coming, but then they've confirmed it like multiple ways. And so you at least have, you know, for a fact that that's something's gone wrong on their end outside of your control. And here down at the bottom, we have the full name of the attendees, the time range that they're going to be there. And you might also see that if this was invitation, if this event was using invitations, they might say that they're invited or they responded yes or no, and some other status levels. I'm going to go ahead and create a new event. I'm going to tie it to a tag. And I chose job. So the Naturally Similar wants to know which job. And again, we see some text that is already in this text field that is meant to convey what kind of information you're supposed to collect. Here we see some icons. This is a house with an arrow pointing out of it. Here's a house with an arrow pointing into it. So that is where they're moving from. That is where they're moving to. And I can click on that to enter their information. And when we get back to the main view, that will become the clickable link. We have notifications that go out to your associates, but we can skip them if maybe we're just correcting a spelling error or something like that. We can set some reminders. For the events, the notifications go out as both text messages and email, just due to the timely nature of events. We have client notifications, which once again, we can skip if needs be, and we can set reminders. And so the client notification, as I said before, will include the portrait of whoever the event lead is. And that way they'll be more comfortable letting people in. Here's where I can set the event lead. I can mark an event as being tentative. If I have an office manager who handles all of the scheduling, then this would be your main contact. And then lastly, for this topic, we have the question of how you manage who's going to do the work. So we have 3 different basic approaches, and each one has its own underlying way of thinking, its own assumptions. This is the direct approach, and thinking here is that you had a company meeting or you're driving back in the car and you've already figured out who's going to do the work. So you don't need SMMware to help you. You just need to formalize it and get it into the system. The notifications that go out from this are simply going to say you are assigned. Next, we have invitations, and we're going to set a team size. And in this case, maybe we invite 5 people. We need 3. Out of those 5 people, 4 of them respond and say that they could do the work. 1 says that they cannot. And then out of the 4 people who would like to do the work, the final step is to pick your final team, because this is a business event. You're not going to send 4 people just because there's 4 that want to go. If you need 3 people, you want 3, not 4, not 2. And you can use the invitations in a couple different ways. You can do what I talked about sending out the invites to say 5 and then 4 respond and you pick your 3. You can also do kind of a shotgun approach where you select everybody and then it becomes first come, first serve. And then next we have another approach you can use here is multiple rounds of invitations, where you invite the 3 people that you would really like to do the work. But if one of them is not available, you can come back and add somebody else and go through multiple rounds of invitations until that is filled. The third approach is called availability. This is our fanciest approach. And under this one, the employees will enter their unavailability. They can say that for the next week, I cannot work Monday morning and I cannot work Friday afternoon. And then when you come back to this screen, they've already entered all that information, and you can see here across the top, there is a time of day. Along the left, there is a list of employees. The green bar, it says available. If they marked their day as having a chunk where they couldn't do anything, there would be a part missing from this green bar. You'd have a white background there instead of the full green bar. And I can assign shifts. So let's say that you have one person show up early. They watch the moving company unload the van, and they play traffic cop and get all the boxes into the right spots. And then the rest of the team shows up and everybody unpacks. For TIA, when you go back to the main calendar view, items that are marked as tentative have a thin red outline around them. So yes, it is clear that it is clear from the basic view that they are, in fact, we're going to mark this one as tentative. So when you go back to the main view, you'll see that it's marked as such. So I'll go ahead and make sure I'm not going to send out a bunch of text messages, and I'll save. And then here you can see the thin red outline saying that this was marked as tentative. I do know that some people, they will create the job even though they haven't won the work quite yet, because they want to mark out some things on the calendar and then make their events marked as tentative. So this approach means that people can say that, well, I should be aware of this event, but I also need to understand that it may not happen. All right, so moving on, I'd like to talk about our integrations. I mentioned integrating with Google Calendar. We also integrate with, I mentioned integrating with QuickBooks. We integrate with QuickBooks Online and Desktop. We also integrate with Google Calendar. This icon means that we're set up to do that. We also integrate with MailChimp, which, if you're not familiar with it, is a tool for mass emails. And SMMware will update, it will update MailChimp with the new clients and their email address, as well as their status as a new client or current client, or a potential client, past client. It will also update MailChimp with all your contacts, and it will tag them for whatever category they're in, like real estate or senior living center. We also integrate with something called Zapier, which is kind of a middleware, so that there are software packages that SMMware does not speak to. Then you can have SMMware talk to Zapier, and then Zapier sends that information off to that other software. Okay, so I believe from here we'll talk about how you can learn about SMMware. We have online manuals. We have a YouTube channel. And we have about 40 plus videos here. Some of them are high level and cover most of the same territory that we've covered today. Some of them are topic specific, like 10 minutes on how to work with sales leads and so on and so forth. And then finally, we have Liz Donovan, who is our accredited trainer. And if you want someone to work with you to know where to click to find things, but also to give you advice on how to customize all these lists that we've mentioned. All the times when we said you can customize this list, you can customize that list. This is someone who can help you to form up what those lists should be. And here's her contact information. She is separate from SMMware, but we've worked with her for a long time and have always gotten great feedback about her. And lastly, in terms of our pricing, we charge on a month-to-month basis. There is no year-long commitments or anything like that, no setup fees, and you get the first 30 days for free. And you can see here the different levels are based on the number of active users, and our prices go up very incrementally as you add more users. So that pretty well covers the basic tour, and I'd be happy to stick around and answer questions should anybody have some. And if you come up with questions later on, you can always contact us, and here's the phone number, and you'll also find the email on the Contact Us page. And we're always happy to do a one-on-one demo to walk you through this and talk about how it can work with your company in particular as well. But other than that, thank you again for joining me here today. I hope you found it useful. So again, everybody have a great day, and hope to hear from you soon. Bye now.